I had another question about regional tech hubs, regional tech and innovation hubs. So I was proud to contribute ideas to the bill about how we can bring minority and women-owned businesses and CDFIs to the table and how we can use the hubs to promote employee ownership and cooperative business models. As you implement these programs, how are you approaching the challenge of building and actually keeping wealth in local communities, particularly vulnerable communities, as we just talked about? How do we make sure the benefits don't just go to large corporations and distant investors?
With tech hubs. So let me say something on the tech hub initiative. I've never seen anything like this oversubscribed. We were appropriated $500 million, and we have received over 400 applications. We are massively oversubscribed. 400 applications from 48 states and 3 territories. We are going through the applications. We're required by statute to designate at least 20, but that means, 380 disappointed places. And I can tell you, these are incredibly high quality applications. So I suppose that's my way of saying, I think at some point you should appropriate more money for this.
Yes.
Because it was authorized at $10 billion. We got $500 million. It's amazing what we're seeing. And this is the thing that allows us to compete with China, invest in America and all of our technology and all of our communities. So the point of this Recompete is for really distressed places. Tech hubs, not so much. Honestly, we want to find places that are really good at some technology, and we can take them from good to great. So I don't want you to think that this is for distressed communities. That being said, it's also not just for big companies. Actually, tech hubs, we want to be looking for the next generation. I don't think of it so much as big companies. CHIPS is big companies. This is for, like a startup ecosystem, an R&D ecosystem, a new innovative way of job training. So that's how we think about it. That's the purpose of it. And I think we'll get that right and make sure we get into every nook and cranny of the community.
Yeah, there's a company in my district, Seek, that works on superconductor-based technology. So I want to give them a shout out as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And now the gentleman from California, I recognize Mr. Issa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, you have what some have considered to be the key cabinet position because it's really a conglomerate of a lot of things that didn't necessarily go together, but Congress saw fit to bring them together. Conveniently and interestingly, we're here to talk about the CHIPS Act, but I think what's interesting is 2 of your key undersecretaries. Your undersecretary known as the BIS and your undersecretary known as the director of the PTO. When you were in China just days ago,
A couple weeks ago.
you were bushwhacked, to say the least, by the launch of a 5G phone and the proof that China has achieved 7 nanometer capability. That wasn't an accident. They chose you as an important symbol of their accomplishment. The tools that are at your disposal, one of them clearly to stop the export of technology that allows exactly what has just occurred to occur. The other one, though, is the one I want to focus on for a moment. Even though the Undersecretary for Intellectual Property, the PTO director, is somewhat independent, still falls under yours, and the coordination is uniquely yours as the Secretary. My question to you is 3 of the top 10 patent recipients last year were Chinese. Only 1 was American. The reality is that Huawei, a company not able to do business in the United States, continues to receive, often clandestinely through proxies, they continue to receive royalties because they are in fact patenting the technology. And there were a couple people that talked about trees and valleys. I'm from Telecom Gulch, San Diego. We are extremely concerned that your administration has to find a way to block in a different way. It's not just about a particular device going to China from Lam or some other entity. The reality is that if China is allowed to create blocking and revenue technology in 5G, in telecommunication, in a host of areas as they are, the patent system, both directly through real innovation and through what I would call AI blocking, in other words, coming up with patents that envision things that they haven't really reduced to practice, will be used against us to thwart us. What can you do with the combination of those and other tools?
Yeah. So let me say this. I would welcome to come sit with you if you have ideas for our consideration. We're trying to use every single tool at our disposal, BIS, enforcement, patents, to deny the Chinese an ability to, get intellectual property, to advance their technology in ways that can hurt us. I was obviously, I don't know what the right word, upset, when I saw the Huawei announcement. The only good news, is, if there is any, is we don't have any evidence that they can manufacture 7 nanometer at scale. And although I can't talk about any investigations specifically, I promise you this. Every time we find credible evidence that any company has gone around our export controls, we do investigate. But as it relates to IP, I'll come sit with you, or have Kathy Vidal come sit with you. If you have ideas for how we can tighten it up, I want to hear them.
Well, I have been able to meet with Kathy. I'd love to meet with you because during the time I left Congress for 2 years, my job was to try to figure out how to compete with Belt and Road. And we don't do it well because we don't coordinate the way China does in competing against us. I would like to see in technology that we do coordinate yours and other parts of the government. So I'll be happy to meet with you at your convenience.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And now the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Ross.
Thank you, Chairman Babin and Ranking Member Lofgren, for holding this very important hearing today. And thank you, Madam Secretary, for being with us. North Carolina's semiconductor industry boasts over 100 semiconductor and other electronic component manufacturing establishments, over 7,600 people employed in the sector, and $1.2 billion in exported product. The passage of the CHIPS and Science Act was critical in re-energizing the U.S. semiconductor production and maintaining America's technological global competitiveness. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST's extramural manufacturing programs are critical to supporting U.S. domestic manufacturing. And Congress authorized significant plus-ups for both the Manufacturing Extension Partnership and the Manufacturing USA program in the CHIPS and Science Act, with major support from the Biden-Harris administration. But as you know, Congress failed to appropriate funding to these programs at the level set in CHIPS and Science. So, Madam Secretary, could you talk about the opportunities that the United States is losing out on by not supporting the Manufacturing Extension Partnership and Manufacturing USA, and how would a decrease in funding to these programs affect domestic manufacturing?
Thank you for your question. So I think it's very significant. We talk a lot about securing our national security, competing with China. The exchange I just had with Congressman Issa relates to what we can do on defense. But my strongly held view is that what we do on offense matters so much more. There's only so much we can do. As you just said, China's coordinated, they're investing. We need to be coordinated and invest. And the reality is that over the past 30 years, this country has taken its eye off the ball of manufacturing. And when you don't manufacture, you lose out on innovation and you become dependent on other countries. So every investment we make in MEP is a great program. You all have MEPs in your states. They are very well run. They help small companies to do innovation in manufacturing. They're the ones who are going to find the next semiconductor manufacturing innovation, the next, interesting battery technology. And so I would say we're working hard on the Manufacturing USA. We're going to announce the topics this fall. There'll be a competition, merit-based. We'll stand it up next year. But yeah, any dollar that's shortchanging MEP or Manufacturing USA shortchanges America's national security and our ability to invest in our own manufacturing capacity.
Great. Final question, back to NIST. I know that the Department of Commerce, primarily through NIST, is looking to increase its investments in quantum information science. Where do you believe the Department of Commerce should focus its efforts for the next 5 years through the National Quantum Initiative?
I'm going to have to get back to you on that. A quantum expert I am not, but I will have Dr. Locascio and her team follow up with you.
Okay, and just to tell you why I think that's so important, some of this we're doing catch-up, or we seeded our semiconductor stature to other countries when we put manufacturing there. On quantum, we can be the leaders, and we already are. Maybe Representative Fouché will ask about this, but if you've never been to the Duke Quantum Science Center to see what is going on for the future, it's amazing. So thank you.
No, thank you. I think we do. We lead the world in quantum. We lead the world in AI, and I will have Locascio follow up with you.
Thank you very much. And now recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Madam Secretary. Appreciate you spending time with us here today. It's a very important topic, and I'd love to talk more about chips. Unfortunately, since I do have you present, I would like to follow up on something that our office has been trying to get some answers on for a while. And as much as we all are tired of talking about the topic, it concerns COVID. I hail from Central Florida. The hurricane hunters that fly for NOAA are in my hometown of Lakeland. And as a former naval aviator, I made it a career practice to avoid flying into storms, but was invited at a point to go flying with the hurricane hunters, and I was looking forward to doing that. Back in July, when I was going to do all the paperwork necessary to do that, I was surprised to find that I would have to supply my status of COVID vaccine status, and be willing to submit to a test or show proof that I didn't have COVID at the time. That kind of came as a surprise to me, considering that the administration had declared an end to the pandemic. And I should have done this before, but Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter I sent to the Secretary back in July, as well as the Department of Commerce's COVID-19 workplace safety plan that was dated in July of 2023.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So our staff started doing some research and finding out why would we still be requiring this? And as it turns out, I read in your department's own plan that the department does not require on-site contractor employees and visitors to provide information about their vaccine status at this time. Additionally, on-site contractor employees and visitors are not required to show proof of a negative COVID-19 test when entering in or a DOC facility, all Department of Commerce, regardless of their vaccine status. There's a disconnect there that I'm really puzzled about, because somewhere between your desk and the deck plate level, someone's decided to create their own policy. And in no way do I fault the folks who are at the tip of the spear trying to get this done. But 41 of my colleagues and I sent you a letter back in July asking for information about this. I'm sure it's languishing in someone's inbox, but I am curious, why would NOAA still be requiring this at this time? Particularly an organization that's nothing but scientists who presumably are following the science every day.
Yeah. So thank you for your question. Let me say a few things. First, I'm sorry we haven't replied yet. I'm constantly trying to get better and quicker at replying, and we'll get your reply this week. Secondly, I don't know, and I'll look into it. I do know, they're very close quarters in these hurricane hunters. They're tiny, and it could be that, but I'll get you a proper answer. Thirdly, I do want to take 10 seconds to say thank you to my team that operates these hurricane hunters. It's been an unbelievably busy season. We only have 2 hurricane hunters that can fly into the thick of the storm. You're braver than I. They've asked me to try
I don't fly into hurricanes.
And I'm not willing to do that. But I am going to take this occasion to ask Congress for additional funding. We have 2 planes. They're old. We operate a fleet of 9 hurricane hunters. They are all old. They need maintenance. I had to take 1 down during a hurricane because of maintenance. So I'll get you proper answers to your questions. But I do want to say that team is working around the clock, and we need Congress's support to maintain this fleet.
No, I do fully support them, and I would support more resources for them. I do understand Ms. Piggy was down, wasn't able to fly into the storm when we needed that data the most. I'm also concerned about the implications for NOAA staff. You know, our staff members of NOAA required to show vaccine status now, because that's also not in accordance
Yeah.
with the administration. So I really would like to have those answers.
Yes, I'll get
And,
you the answers. We have a policy that is science-based, as you say. And so I'll follow up.
Very, very good. Thank you, Madam Secretary, and I yield back.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Now, the gentleman from Illinois, I'd like to recognize Mr. Sorensen.
I want to thank the chairman and ranking member for convening the hearing, and Secretary Raimondo for your willingness to appear today. And just to continue on the subject, in my previous life, I was a meteorologist, and so I really appreciate your support for those who put themselves in harm's way. Flying into the hurricane so that we have the data to better forecast where these killer storms are going to go. So I would invite you to come to our office so that I could help champion how we can find the funding for the Hurricane Hunter aircraft to protect lives and property.
Thank you.
The CHIPS and Science Act included $50 billion for CHIPS for America Fund, $39 billion for implementation for manufacturing incentive programs, and $11 billion for R&D and workforce development. $39 billion, that's a huge investment in CHIPS manufacturing. However, the costs of manufacturing is very high, more than will be covered by this investment. We need industry to capitalize on the investments made in CHIPS. In the last year, CHIPS Program Office has staffed up and released 2 Notice of Funding Opportunity announcements. One of those was for the $39 billion for the Semiconductors Financial Assistance Program, which has received hundreds of statements of inquiry. In your perspective, have the investments made through CHIPS and Science Act incentivize and catalyze the investment of private capital in the CHIPS economy on the scale that we need?
So it's a great question. Yes. So let me say, although $39 billion is an enormous amount of taxpayer money and it's an unprecedented program, it really is a drop in the bucket, relative to the mission we have to meet. Since the president signed the CHIPS and Science Act, there's been more than $300 billion of private investment or announced into the semiconductor industry. So that's why I answer yes to your question. Like, if we continue to go on a path that for every dollar we invest, there's $10 or more of private capital, then, you know what, that I feel good about that. But it is necessary, which is why, my job is to cut the best deal possible for the taxpayer.
Right.
To draw in as much private capital as possible.
How does our investment compare with China's investment today?
Much lower. Much lower. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but China. I think China I'll get to the exact number, but I think they have like $145 billion fund just for semiconductors, and they've announced massive investments, state subsidies in legacy chips and mature node chips. So much lower. But our private sector is the envy of the world. We're not a state-run economy, nor do we want to be one. So we will compete and win, and we're not going to go toe-to-toe with them for public money. We're going to out-innovate them and draw in private sector capital, which is why the question you're asking is so hard. So it's the right question, and we have to make sure it happens.
How do we make sure that we meet the workforce requirements when we go forward? I know that was brought up before. And how can Congress be part of the solution?
I think Congress needs to continue to fund workforce, apprenticeships, job training. These aren't social programs. These are essential business investments for America to compete. When I think about, if you say to me, Secretary, what is success in implementing the CHIPS Act? It isn't just incentivizing a dozen new fabs. It's getting colleges and universities to put out 3 times as many engineers. It's getting, every community college in America to have a semiconductor technician certification program. It's getting high school students, to be taught vocational training and things that relate to the chip industry. So I'd say continue to fund it and don't look at it as a soft investment. It's actually every bit as important to invest in our people as it is in our tanks and missiles and, hardware.
Great. Appreciate that perspective, and I yield back.